So I guess I'll go ahead and start the recording. Hopefully, I locked the course room now, so hopefully that mistake won't happen in the future. I didn't realize that there was already a room open. I have never used this program before. So like I said, there's going to be a learning curve. And I appreciate your patience. I mean, fortunately, the lecture for last time was uploaded on YouTube, so if you didn't get a chance to see it, you can go and watch it at your leisure. I just think that it's important to hold class. So I want to start off today. I'm going to try to use this whiteboard here. I want to start it off today with just like asking you stuff that you remember from the last time that we met. So what is the grade breakdown for the class? What is expected for the final grade?
What was it?
First of all, how many categories do we have?
So like 3.
3. Okay, 3 categories. Nobody remembers?
What's the
okay, what's the biggest percentage of the grade?
Oh, the 60%.
Okay, and that is for what?
Was that writings? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's your essays. Okay.
Okay.
And how many essays are there?
So
how many essays are there?
Is there 2, 3? Can't remember. 3.
Three.
Okay.
Yep, and they're each 20%.
Okay.
And they are 1,000 words in length, MLA format. So by far, this is the most important part of the grade, and we are going to go over the first essay prompt today. Okay. What are the other 2 categories?
Got the learning activities.
Okay, learning activities. So that will be 5 discussions and X number of quizzes. Okay, I'm not going to tell you how many quizzes. The quizzes are pop quizzes. Okay. Okay. And then the final 20% is what?
Assessments.
Okay, and what is that?
Like response papers.
4 response papers. Good. Okay. And how long are those supposed to be?
Can't remember actually.
One page in length.
Okay.
Okay. So that is the grade breakdown. And it's good to go over it because you need to know what's expected and what's due. The essays are by far the most important part of the class. We will go over the first prompts today. We'll go over one for the essay as well as one for the response paper. Okay, I'm going to erase that. Okay, so and if anybody has a mic, please feel free to chime in or to type your answers because it is important that we facilitate some kind of discussion. I appreciate those of you who've answered so far. Okay, I want to ask you about plagiarism. Okay, sorry for the awful chicken scratch here, but okay. What is plagiarism?
Plagiarism is pretty much just copying someone else's work and putting it as your own.
Okay, copying without credit. Okay, good. Because like I said the last time, we will be using other sources, right? But we have to give credit to those sources so that people know where they came from and they can establish the credibility of those sources. So what do we do in order to give credit to the source?
You quote the author and then you put the page number.
Quote, and then the page number goes in what?
In parentheses.
Yes, it's called a parenthetical citation. Okay, so we're going to be looking at George Orwell later on. So I'll just put Orwell in here, Orwell 17. And then so that tells me if I want to find this quote, I look at your works cited page, which is at the end of your essay and has your sources listed. and I see, okay, this is George Orwell's 1984. I go to my shelf, I get the book, I open the book to page 17, lo and behold, there's your quote, right? It allows me to access anything that you quote so that I can see where it came from and I can judge it for myself. Okay, good. What are some things that you don't have to cite? There's one thing that you really don't have to cite that we want to talk about. Does anyone remember what it is? Anybody? Yes, good. Thank you, Sasha. Common knowledge. Common knowledge. Okay, what's an example of common knowledge? What would you say is common knowledge? Is everybody asleep?
I'm still here. I don't remember, to be honest.
It's all good. Common knowledge is things that we know that most people know, or that they should know, right? Because you can't know what everyone's going to know, but most people should know things that are common knowledge. So, example of common knowledge: the sun is mostly round, right?
Mm-hmm.
The sun is made of gas.
Mm-hmm.
The sky is usually blue during the daytime, right? All of these things are things that we don't need to quote. In terms of the essay, if you say the United States government is composed of 3 branches, the federal government, then that's something that should be common knowledge within our society. You don't have to really track down a source that says, hey, there are 3 branches of government, cite it, because it's something that everyone should know. But if it isn't common knowledge, if something is esoteric or uncommon knowledge in any sense of the word, you have to cite it. You have to quote and cite it. We do this to prevent ourselves from falling victim to conjecture and just saying things that may or may not be true, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So common knowledge does not need to be cited. Can you plagiarize yourself? Is it possible?
I would
Yes.
say, yeah.
Yeah, it is definitely. Someone answered in the chat. Yes, it's possible. Why is self-plagiarism a thing? Right, because it's your intellectual property. If you wrote something before, then it's yours, right? So there's really no theft involved. But why is it still considered an academically dishonest thing to do? Yeah, right. You want to treat each assignment as though it's a new assignment, right? Because you're treating each class as a new experience, as a chance to grow intellectually. If you're recycling old work, you're just trying to get around the task. So it's the same as cheating, right? So if you happen to have read something that we've read before, like if you've read, let's say you read The Lottery in 8th grade, and you have some old flash drive with information that you wrote on the lottery. Don't recycle that. It might be hard for me to tell, but it's still not what you want to do. You want to treat each assignment as though it's a new obstacle for you to overcome, because you can always redo an assignment and do something better this time around, or have more insight than you did when you were in 8th grade. Hopefully you do, right? So good. Self-plagiarism is a thing. The other thing that's important I want to bring up is that it is possible, and in fact fairly common, for people to plagiarize by accident. Okay, it is not always an intentional act, and that's very important to understand, because I get a lot of cases where people will plagiarize, and then I draw attention to it, and they don't even understand that they've done it. The biggest incident of this happening is when somebody will have sources that they used, and they'll list the sources at the end in the works cited page, but they won't provide any citations in the actual text. Without the citations in the text, I can't tell what comes from you and what comes from another source. And so I have to assume that every word on the page you are saying, because the quotation marks and the citations are absent, you're saying, this is my work. So if it turns out that it's not, it's still plagiarism. And it's kind of an uncomfortable discussion to have with people that don't understand that it isn't just putting the citations at the end, it's also making sure they're quoted and have the parenthetical citations in the text, right? So that's important to know. Okay, so that pretty much covers what I wanted to go over for the review on what we talked about the other day. I just wanted to make sure that everyone was paying attention to that stuff because it is very important. And even as I sit here and say all that stuff about plagiarism, I guarantee you we'll have at least one case somewhere before the semester is over. So I have to do it. We will move on to the next thing. How's everybody doing, by the way? Feeling okay?
Pretty well.
Good. I know this is not the most riveting stuff, but I will try to improve upon that in the future. We are going to talk about rhetorical strategies, which we mentioned briefly, I believe, in the first meeting. So what are rhetorical strategies? What is rhetoric? Somebody maybe that hasn't said anything yet? I know there are more people. There's 13 of us in the room right now. Don't be shy. I feel like I'm a game show host the way I'm talking. You guys like that? Rhetorical strategies. Any idea? Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Persuasive communication. Words to convey meaning. Yeah, both of those are good. You could think of them as like methods of meaning, you could say, or like strategies you have at your disposal that help with the communication process, right? Which is often persuasive. So good. Okay, that'll do. Sorry to have to pressure you guys into it. Okay, so let's talk then about what is rhetoric. It's defined as the art of effective or persuasive speaking or writing, especially the use of figures of speech and other compositional techniques. Essentially, it's the means by which we use language to persuade other people into accepting our point of view, or to maybe just to understanding it, if not accepting. You might also think of this as like your communication strategy. How are you going to get your point across to your reader? Okay, and there are lots of different strategies that you have at your disposal. I've included pictures of my garden and stuff because I'm a total ham. So sorry. We'll move on to the next slide. What are rhetorical strategies? So rhetorical strategies are writing techniques that we may use to achieve the goal of rhetoric, which is persuasion or communication. There are a wide array of rhetorical strategies, ranging from description to exemplification to full-blown argumentation. Mastery of rhetorical strategies endows an individual with a lot of power. If you can persuade people and are an effective communicator, the world becomes your oyster. I always like that figure of speech, the world becoming your oyster. I'm not sure where it originated, but it's interesting. So yeah, these are different ways that you have to effectively communicate. And you do get a lot of power from speech. I think it's downplayed in our society, the power that comes from being able to communicate effectively, because you can really overcome a lot of stuff. Okay. Well, that's kind of small, isn't it? Okay, well, we'll just, I'll just read them off. It doesn't look this way on a normal projector. The 9 major rhetorical strategies which we will be working with, which we are going to touch on in this slide. The first one is narration, which is like to tell a story. Description, I won't define them because there's a slide for each one. I'll just go through. Narration, description, exemplification, classification, or sometimes that's called classification and division. Process writing, definition, compare and contrast, cause and effect, and persuasion or argumentation. Okay, we will be working with most of the ones on this list, but I will teach all of them to you so that you can use them. Okay, there are only 3 essays, so obviously you're not going to be using all of the strategies, especially since for the first essay you have to pick one of 5. But we will learn how to do them all. We will talk about all of them in class. We will do practice exercises to learn how to master these, and hopefully it will help with future writing assignments as well, not just for this class. So what is narration? Narration is the art of storytelling, and this is probably one of the oldest ways of communication, right? We all tell stories. Some stories are true true to life. This happened to me when I went to the Quick Trip this morning. And some stories are fictional. They're made up, either for entertainment purposes or nefarious purposes, right? You make up stories to tell your mom, to tell her where you've been. So narratives are usually, but not always, in chronological order. Those of you who are fans of Quentin Tarantino know that he is no fan of chronological order. You will see an individual sort of die in one scene and be alive in the next. Yeah, escape reality. Yeah, it can be used to escape reality for sure. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we indulge narratives and stories, right? Especially fictional ones, because they give us that escape outlet. And they're usually in chronological order. Some chronological. You guys hear that? Chronological order, but not always. We use narration in the real or practical world when you want to tell a story, the story that encompasses a significant series of events that happen to you. So, and I'm sure you guys all have that one friend that tells stories in this really long-winded way, you know, and they give you every little detail, and they change details that are not necessary to the story. And oh, maybe there were 6 people. No, there were 7. Wait, there were 6. And they tell you every little color of every little wrapper that was on the floor when it happened. You know, you have these long-winded stories. So when you're telling a story, it's important to try to be concise and try to be very, very specific. You guys are going to get tired of me saying that to you. I say, increase the specificity, be more specific. This is because I think we tend to speak very broadly, especially when we write. And the more specific you are, the more effective your communication is, especially in the art of storytelling, right? You don't want to weigh people down with details, but you don't want to be so vague that they can't tell what you're talking about, right? There's a happy medium. You'll find that is the case a lot with writing. There are no absolute rules. There are often happy mediums that you want to find. You don't want to be too wordy, but you also don't want to be too concise either, because then you don't say very much, right? So that's the first one. And this is probably, like I said, probably the oldest form. We've been telling ourselves stories for a long time. Before there was TV, there were stories, you know, stories around a campfire and that kind of thing. So this is kind of one of the first methods of conveying information that we developed. All right, we'll go to the next slide. Description writing. Description writing focuses on sensory details. So how does it look, smell, taste, feel, etc. To describe a given person, place, object, or setting. We use description writing to paint a mental picture for our readers. This can prove useful in day-to-day life. You're trying to describe something. If you're ever giving directions to somebody, you use description writing. You know, if you pass the big chicken, you've gone too far, right? And it's 12 stories tall. Because, you know, you give people details. Descriptive writing is also one of those where specificity is very important. When we describe something, we want to be really specific so that the reader gets a clear and accurate picture of the thing that we are describing. Remember, too, that describing focuses on specifically sensory details. Sensory details are those elements which you perceive with your 5 senses, your sight, sound, smell, taste, whatever, feel. And then there's the 6th sense for in Shyamalan, right? But that's how we generally perceive our world, and so we convey those perceptions through sensory details. It's different than definition. Does anyone know how? Because they're kind of hand in hand, right? When you define something, you tend to describe it to some degree. But how might description and definition differ? Anyone want to guess? I'm going to pull up the Jeopardy theme. Okay, definition is the meaning of something. Okay, yeah, it's okay. And how might the meaning be more complicated than just the sensory details? I mean, I think you're on the right track. You know, it's not just how it looks and how it feels. It's also what it does. So we were to apply this, let's say, to a hammer, right? If we were going to do a description of a hammer, we would say, well, it's, you know, so and so inches long. It has a a claw on it. It's made of wood and metal. You know, and you could, it's this color, right? You're giving details about it, describing the perception of the object. Whereas if you were to define a hammer, well, that's a tool for driving in nails. Yeah, the purpose is what comes into the definition, right? So it is, they are hand in hand, but they are a little bit different as well. This image right here, this is one of my chickens. I like to, like I said, I like to throw stuff in there just to make it a little more interesting and also to kind of brag about how cool my chickens are. Okay. Exemplification. So this is, they are Polish chickens. So the Polish, no, they're related to Silkies. Silkies also have like the tufts on their head, but no, Polish have feathers on their head, and they're not. Silkies look almost fuzzy, if you've ever seen it. So these are Polish. He's actually a hybrid. I sort of was Dr. Frankenstein with the genetics created. Okay, exemplification writing is the use of specific examples to reinforce a given main idea, argument, or purpose. So providing people examples can often give a frame of reference to help people understand something better. And you can think of a time, I'm sure, where you're telling someone something and they're just not getting it. They're giving you this like, look, I don't really understand what you're talking about. You say, okay, for example, and then you give a situational example, which they can use as a point of comparison to understand your initial point, right? So examples can serve to prove your assertion. When we use exemplification in the classroom this semester, we're going to be using it for providing evidence for claims that we make in the argumentative essay, right? Or in the essay, the third essay about the novel that we were going to read. We will provide examples from secondary sources, from the texts that we're using, and those examples will help us prove the points that we're making. So when we get to the argumentative essay, which is the second essay, we need to train ourselves to make assertions in the form of argumentative claims. Okay, so we're going to put forth a claim, and then we're going to switch from argumentation to exemplification and provide some evidence to reinforce the claim, and then we will explain how the evidence reinforces the claim. So this is a very good tool at your disposal, using examples, giving people examples so that they can better understand what you mean. And in the case of formal writing, you want to make sure, though, that those examples are academically credible, right? So we're going to talk about that academic credibility, the CRAP test, the flat earth, all that fun stuff. Exemplification writing allows us to grant the reader a deeper perspective regarding the real-world applications of our argument, right? So, for example, this is actually applicable. Go to the next one. Everybody good? So I slow down, cover anything again? This one is called classification writing. It's sometimes called classification/division. And this is the process of breaking down a large category into smaller, more digestible pieces. Okay, so you think about, let's say, if we were to take the United States of America as a broad category. That's a very, very broad category, right? How would we break the United States of America down into smaller pieces?
You can go by each state.
You could go by states, right? Now, states is definitely a way that they can be divided because there are 50 of them, and we know. But that actually might pose a problem in an essay. Why is that? If you were trying to write an essay where you're going to break down the United States, why might going by state be difficult? Yeah, Brooke Williams says regions. I think that's a better route, right? Because states, there are 50 of them. And if you're going to break something down, you probably want to devote, especially if you're writing an essay, you probably want to devote a whole body paragraph to each thing that you're breaking down, right? So if you got 50 states, I mean, I'm not reading that essay. You can write it if you want. But I think the regions is a lot safer bet. Because there are still quite a few regions, but it's not as long as 50. And you have regions like the South, the Pacific Northwest, the Midwest, the New England, all of that stuff. So those different regions are a little bit more broad. Okay, good. Let's switch to another thing that we can break down. Let's say different types of food. Here's a challenge. What if you had to break down different types of food into only 3 categories? Because someone in my first class this morning, they had a really clever way of doing it. Anyone want to guess? How would you break down the whole of food? Because food is that's a massive category. How could we break down food? Doesn't have to be only 3, just any way you can think.
Something like sweet, sour, bitter, stuff like that.
Yeah, we could do it by like the flavor category, right? Bitterness, sweetness, sourness. Some people say savory or whatever is a flavor. I don't know if that's true. But yeah, that might be one way to do it. Okay, good. What's another way to do it?
You could do like entrees, sides, and desserts.
Yeah, see, that's the one that people came up with this morning. Instead of sides, though, they said appetizers. But what we found was that you could pretty much break down all of food into those 3 categories, which 3 in this case would be a magic number. The reason being that, generally speaking, you want to aim for like 5 paragraphs. That's a good number. You know, an introductory paragraph, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion paragraph. So if you got those 3 categories where you can discuss different types of food, that might be a good way to do it. Incidentally, classification and division is one of the strategies that is available to you for the first essay. But let's try not to use too many of the topics that we discuss in class. But that's good. Yeah, food is a way to do it. And you can do this all sorts of different ways. You know, I had somebody did a classification division on different types of bears. And I was, okay, cool, different types of bears. Black bears, grizzly bears, Kodiak bears. It was an interesting essay, right? So there are lots of ways to do this. And classification, breaking things down into categories is kind of what we do. You know, we understand things by grouping them together. So it can be an effective way to explain something to someone, especially if you have such a really like huge thing that like if you were trying to tell a space alien about the United States, you would definitely have to break things down, right? You would not be able to just start talking in a frame of reference that he can understand. So breaking things down categorically and kind of explaining the individual categories. Essay writing in particular is all about organization. So when you're deciding how many categories you want to use, you definitely want to think about the organization issue, because how are you going to structure that essay such that you can get all of those categories involved, right? Okay. Process writing. Process writing is explaining how to do something, or how something works. It's generally an informative method. The form of writing can be used. It can be used for training coworkers or getting a client to understand new software or anything. Like, I'm just trying to give you practical applications for how the strategies can be used. Because a lot of people go, "Why do I need to do English class?" It's like, well, here's why. You can explain to people very clearly and succinctly how to do something. Because a lot of times you'll be in that position, especially if you get in an area where you garner some expertise. Eventually, someone is going to look at you and go, "Hey, can you explain this to them?" So the better you are at process writing, the more effective you will be at that form of communication. You want to be very meticulous and construct the process chronologically so that it can be repeated by your reader. This is one that you've got to pay attention to chronological order. You can't be a Quentin Tarantino with process, because then you'll have people making a peanut butter sandwich incorrectly. And a lot of people do for the first essay. This is another one that you have the option of doing, and I will show you that prompt at the end of this presentation. But a lot of people do process. A lot of people have different dishes that they cook, things that they like to eat at home, secret family recipes that have been handed down from generation to generation, that kind of thing. So this is a popular one, to say the least, for the first essay. And a lot of people, like I said, like to do recipes. But when you're doing the recipe, you really want to think about how clear can you be, right? Because if you're too vague with the instructions, then people will not do it correctly. Likewise, if you're too meticulous with the discovery, like too over-specific, you might muddle the recipe. You might make certain emphasis lessen because you put in too many details that they don't need to know, right? So you want to find that happy medium of describing something succinctly directly and as clearly and as specific as possible. So that's kind of a tough medium to work out. Trying to think of, oh, has anyone ever done that experiment? Maybe when you were in like elementary school or something, somebody asked you to make a peanut butter sandwich and to write down all of the steps to make the peanut butter sandwich. It seems to be a very common thing that people do. Yeah, people have done it. So what is the point of that experiment, Brooke? Or anybody that wants to answer.
Let's say to show like how, what was the word? How detailed you are about it. Because if you write down like the little steps, it might not be good for it.
Well, yeah, so if you were to say, all right, the first step is to spread the peanut butter on the bread. If you were trying to explain to a space alien how to do it, the space alien would take the peanut butter, he would start spreading it on the cellophane on the outside of the bread, right? Because the first step is not really to spread the peanut butter. The first step is to open the bag, extract the bread, right? There are steps that you just kind of skip over because you don't think it's an important. Really, when you're dealing with something like making a peanut butter sandwich, which is not particularly esoteric or difficult to master, it really doesn't matter. You can say spread the peanut butter on the sandwich, and they'll go, okay, that makes sense. But if you're dealing with something that's more difficult or that's more involved, if you were trying to explain to someone how to weld something properly, you definitely wouldn't want to skim over details, right? Because those details are very important, and if there are certain details on the dirt,
Right.
you can get an engine to hurt themselves or to burn themselves. So it's important to think about how to break things down into steps. Try to picture it. Put yourself in that situation. Really break it down. Every step that is necessary, and do so in as clear of a way as possible. Okay. Everybody, you got that one process? That's a common one for essay one, say the least. Come on, there we go. Definition. We talked about this a little bit before. Definitions matter. The way that we define things matter. And they establish a framework through which we view a situation. The way that we define people. We're always defining things. You're walking around and you're defining everything you see. You see a guy in a uniform, you say, oh, he's a police officer, right? And you've defined him. You've given him a term that comes with a set of presuppositions that then apply to his character in your mind. So it's good to be good at defining things because then your framework is clear, if that makes sense. So focus on the essential and specific details. And don't just focus on the sensory details, but also focus on other details that are unique to the character of the thing that you're defining. Also, you might want to consider function. What does the thing do? What is its purpose? Some things don't have a purpose, right? But a lot of things do have a purpose, and if you leave that purpose out, it may not be apparent what the intention is, right? Good example is lawn flamingos. People put pink flamingos out. Well, if you don't explain to someone that is a lawn decoration, they may assume incorrectly that it's used to scare away other flamingos or something like that. You want to make sure that your definitions are clear. Sorry, I don't really know why I got off on flamingos. That's where my head is today. It's been a long morning. Whoops, I think I went too far. Yeah. Okay. Compare and contrast. This is another option that you have. A lot of people really don't think about how we define things in comparison to other things, right? We usually just think about how we define things independently. But a lot of times comparing things and contrasting them can give us a clearer perspective of both things because it shows us how the thing in question relates to other things. How many times did I just say thing? Anyone want to go back to the video and count it later? But in any case, what you're going to do is you're going to take two things, objects, in juxtaposition, put them next to each other. That's juxtaposition, by the way. That's your word for the day. And discuss both their similarities and their differences. And make sure that these two things aren't just, you don't do this independently, like list a bunch of stuff having to do with one thing and then list a bunch of stuff having to do with the next thing in the next paragraph. You want to make sure that you put them in conversation with one another, right? So while X thing has this, Y thing is this way, right? And that makes it to where there's a dialogue between the two things, and they don't just exist independently. There are different ways you could do this. You could put 3 categories that you're going to compare and contrast in each individual paragraph about, or you could do 1 paragraph defining this thing, 1 paragraph defining this other thing, then another one comparing and contrast. But there are different ways that you can organize the essay. If you want to look at the textbook in the Blackboard course shell, the textbook there has outlines and descriptions on how to format all of these different strategies in essay form. So more than simply listing said similarities and differences from one sentence to another, compare and contrast focuses on objects in conversation with one another, and ask the question, what sort of relationship do these objects have? Try to note the similarities and differences in an objective and meaningful way. It's easy for you to put too much of your own opinion. We want to try to train you. Remember, this isn't just writing, this is formal writing. So we want to try to train you to be as objective as possible. What is objective? Anyone know that word from somewhere else or some other experience?
Unopinionative.
Yeah, you don't have, you're not looking at a situation with an internal bias, right? You're looking at a situation and some degree of removal is involved, right? You are separate from the situation to a point where you can assess it without, like I said, implying a bias. Yeah, it's unbiased. If you were to say, football and soccer had many similarities and differences, and one of the differences is that soccer sucks and football doesn't, right? I'm not a big sports guy. I don't dislike sports, but don't anybody who's defensive about one or the other. You would obviously interpret that as a tone of bias. What is the problem with bias? Why should we strive to remove bias language from what we do? How do people react to bias? Might be a better question. Yeah, a lot of people get defensive. A lot of people just shut down. I remember back when I had to actually work with a physical textbook several years ago now. There was a series of articles in the textbook that you had to review and sort of talk about, like, the problems, the pros and cons of each essay. And the essays were about the prevalence of concussions in football, and like football-related injuries, specifically head injuries, which can have all kinds of complications. And there were different takes on each subject. Some people said you got to have risk in life. You're going to make an omelet, you got to break a couple eggs. That sort of approach to the situation, which is kind of a little bit gruesome because it involves people getting injured permanently. But and you had other people that would take the very much like we have to be careful approach. We have to really make sure that we're not injuring our children. And one of these articles, I remember the title was "Football Builds Character, Being a Wuss Doesn't." Okay, that was literally the title of the article. And this guy was some head of some athletic association or something. He was all up in arms about the football. Yeah, it's really bad. It was bad. And when the students read it, I mean, naturally they would react the way you would expect. They were like, "This guy is totally biased. He's not open to other people's opinions. He's putting people down with the tone and the style of his language." So you do want to try to be objective. You want to try to remove yourself from the situation. And if you put too much inflection or too much value judgment into your compare and contrast, and sometimes it's hard to do. By the way, if you're going to do the Michael Jordan versus Kobe Bryant essay, you're not original. Okay, I just want to let you know that I've gotten that essay a lot. It's a decent essay to get because there is an argument to be had there. Not Kobe Bryant. Who is it? Here I am. I'm screwing up. LeBron James. There I go. And this is going to be recorded too, so now I look like a yeah, it's LeBron James. So that's a common one, and that's one of the ones where I've noticed that when I read that essay, there's a lot of like, well, clearly this is correct and this is objectively better, and it's biased. That bias, just let the facts speak for themselves, right? Okay. Kind of went off on a tangent there. Sorry. compare and contrast. Then we have cause and effect. Okay, so cause and effect. You know, everything in the universe, every action that takes place has a cause that led to it coming about, right? You see this when you knock over dominoes. You have a string of dominoes, you flick them over. Each domino falling affects the next domino, causing it to fall, which affects the next domino, right? This is kind of how the universe works. So this is a good way to get people to consider consequences of certain actions. So let's say that you had a company and somebody in your company wanted to expand in a way that you didn't think was going to be beneficial. You could take a cause and effect approach, and you could lay out all of the ways that maybe they don't understand their vision may backfire, right? If you decide to move into this area, you will stretch our resources, you will incur X amount of costs, right? So you frame the cause, and then you give the effects of the cause. This is another thing that you can do. You can say, okay, if the cause is human beings ramping up the amount of nuclear power that they have, what are the potential effects of this? And there could be positive effects and there are negative effects. Positive effects is that's a lot of energy. Negative effects is it's quite risky. And if you have something like a meltdown or something like that with a reactor, you can cause a lot of problems, not only to people, but to the environment. You can make areas unlivable. So you use the cause of a specific incident or a specific thing, and you use that to sort of lay out the effects of what could happen as a result, or what has happened. Maybe you focus on the truth as it has already occurred instead of just speculating. But either way, this is a good way to communicate to people maybe things they don't see or things they haven't considered using the cause and effect strategy. It's the purpose of the cause and effect essay is to determine how various phenomena relate in terms of origins and results. Okay? The form of writing is useful for explaining the potential risks or consequences of certain business decisions or just work decisions, right? If you drive the forklift like it is a bumper car, you will destroy the warehouse, right? Okay, there you go. Essay done. Persuasion and argumentation. So this is my favorite. This is my personal favorite. A lot of people, when they hear argumentation, they think to themselves, oh, that's when my sister steals the last Twinkie and I go in there to give her a piece of my mind. And that is argument, right? We do have arguments with other people that are very not productive and sort of conflictuous. So we tend to think that argument is bad. When we hear argument, we're like, I don't want to argue. That's not good. But actually, argumentation or persuasion, it just means to communicate a point, to put forth a claim and then reinforce it, to basically prove something as being true, an argument, right? So it's a little bit different. It doesn't come with that sort of negative context that we tend to associate with it. You must assert an argumentative claim, okay? We're going to be thinking about claims and how claims differ from just regular observations, right? Because an observation is something you can't really argue with, but a claim requires evidence. So it's a little bit different. And learning how to craft claims which require evidence as a defense is crucial to understanding the argumentative strategy. It's probably, I would say this is the most important rhetorical strategy, especially in today's day and age, because people really, they don't know the rules of argument. They don't know how a logical exchange should be conducted. And they really importantly, they don't know the pitfalls, things like logical fallacies, right? Because there are lots of things out there that look like logic that are actually not logical at all. And there are fallacies that are sort of in disguise, making you think that an argument is good when it isn't. So we're going to learn all of that stuff when we get to persuasion and argumentation. I have an entire unit that I devote to this one strategy, right? That's the second essay, the middle of the semester. And so for the argumentative essay, I'll just go ahead and tell you in advance, you are going to be picking a topic for making an argument about, like anything, any contemporary issue that you have interest in. There are some limitations on that. I don't want you to pick an argument that I consider low-hanging fruit. Okay, so that's like all of the arguments that you have heard 1,000 times before, and that you just have this like knee-jerk, like, I'll just use this as an example, and this is not to pick on anybody with a strong opinion on this either way, but like the Second Amendment, I get a lot of essays, either really pro-gun or really anti-gun. That's a topic that it's like, that's so, you can get in a discussion about that with anybody you meet on the street, right? It's not something that's going to challenge you. It's not something that's going to put you outside of your area of comfort and cause you to do a little bit of research and to look into things and maybe consider the fact that you could be wrong, right? We don't start with the answer in a lot of these cases. We start with the question and we say, okay, what is the truth? And then we use logic to infer what the truth is. We don't decide we know the truth and then defend that truth, right? That's a reversal of the process. So not to say that those topics are banned, but if you do have a topic that I consider low-hanging fruit or something that is really, really common, then you might be asked to make it a little more nuanced or complex in some way, depending on the situation. So let's see. Most important rhetorical strategy, especially in college setting, also especially today with the internet. Hopefully you're not one of those people that spends a lot of time bickering with people on the internet. I wasted some time in my youth, my extreme youth, and hopefully you don't share that unfortunate behavioral trend. But the problem with doing it today is that no one is playing by the rules. No concerned with the rules, and people are not open really to the idea that they might be wrong. And that's a problem, because if you were having an argument with someone, the objective is not really to win at all costs, right? The objective is to arrive at the truth. So if you're having an argument with someone and someone gives you information, proves the information, and that information makes what you said incorrect, the adult thing to do is to accept the new position as true until it can be proven otherwise. That's not what most people do. Most people, when confronted with a truth that goes against their preset, prescribed opinion, react with vitriol and sort of anger, or they shut down and they don't listen. It's a problem. We need more people to understand the rules of logical discourse, to understand logical fallacies, and to understand how to put forth claims in a meaningful way that involves the use of evidence, and not just any evidence, right? Credible evidence, because a lot of the stuff that we find on the internet in particular is garbage. It's made up, right? Hate to tell you, there's a lot of stuff, because anybody can publish anything on the internet, right? Anybody who's got a blog can, live in their mom's basement and write whatever they want. I'm sorry, that's not to be too mean there, but you get what I'm saying. So that is something you have to take into consideration. The sources that you use to prove your argument, the claims that you use, they have to be credible. What is credibility? Why don't, let's say you're going here, some of you may be trying to be nurses. I assume there are a few nursing students out there in the abyss. If you want to be a nurse, why are you going to school? Why don't you just go and start stabbing people with needles? What's stopping you?
Your education.
Why do you need that?
To kind of show that you're good for the job.
Okay, to prove yourself in a formal setting. Liability is another thing. Why is it a liability to just go in and just start practicing nursing with no knowledge of how to do so? I mean, to understand the human body, right? The point I'm trying to make is pretty plain. It's really that without the credibility, without that, the garnering of the expertise, you're not qualified to practice that. You probably would do more harm than good. You look at the origins of medicine, we definitely did more harm than good before we started doing good, because we had to figure out how the body works. Well, now we've figured out a lot of those things. So we send you to school so you can learn the things that we already know. If you just decide that you know everything and go to work nursing on people, it's probably going to end poorly, despite it being illegal, right? Even though it is illegal, it would probably be bad anyway, right? Because you would make some terrible mistake, and it would be bad. So credibility matters. Your credentials matter. Your education matters. We're living in a time when people are trying to downplay these things because there's this revolt against the establishment or whatever you want to say. But sometimes that establishment exists for a reason. And sometimes the processes that it establishes are the best ones in order to determine. It varies. It depends on what you're talking about. But especially as it applies to science, I think it's good to trust the scientific experts because they're the ones who devoted their life to understanding that whole thing and have laid it out for us so that we can see it for ourselves. So sorry, that was a bit long-winded. I've been talking quite a lot today. You can tell that I'm a little bit hoarse. So that, I think that's the last slide. That's the last strategy. And we will be using the argumentative strategy somewhat when we write about the novel because you will be making an argument about the novel. So I say at the end, your second and third essay will be dedicated to a mastery of argumentative writing. That is true. But the second essay is purely argumentative, just about a subject of your choosing. And the third essay is an argument about a novel, which is a little bit different. So are there any questions about the strategies and stuff? Concerns, comments? Does anyone want to tell us how they're feeling? I always want to be open to how people are feeling.
I'm chilling right now.
Good, that's good to know. That's wonderful. Okay, see what else I got some other stuff for you. We need to talk about, let me pull up the whiteboard, because we need to talk about thesis statements. Yeah, that's the most important thing when we're dealing with writing an essay, right? So, sorry, this, oh my gosh. Thesis. You guys think I can get this all in one line? Statement. Yeah. Okay. What is that?
Pretty much like a topic.
Yeah, topic, main idea, right? All of that is good. But it's not just like the topic of my essay will be kelp, right? I always go to kelp because I got an essay one time that was titled "Help the Kelp." I thought it was really brilliant. But yeah, it's the main point. Okay, so it needs to be phrased as a sentence, right? That needs to hit all of the bases. It's not just to say what you're writing about, but also to put forth kind of the main idea, like this is why, your intention. Your intention comes into your thesis statement. This is why I'm writing today, right? And you lay it out. Okay, so how many sentences is a thesis generally?
Is it like one or two?
It's one, maybe two. I'm going to put maybe two. Wow, that's awful. Okay. Yeah, one sentence is generally what you're after. Sometimes you can use two. It depends. Some thesis statements are much more complicated than other ones. Sometimes people take an ambitious approach to what they're doing, and they're juggling a lot of stuff. So one sentence doesn't cut it. But most of the time, you want to stick to one sentence. That one sentence needs to contain everything that you're going to discuss. A good way to write a thesis statement is to include subpoints. Okay. What are subpoints?
Like little topics containing to the thesis.
Yeah. So, okay, classification division essay about bears, right? Thesis statement might be, there are many types of bears, including brown bear, grizzly bears, and polar bear, right? Okay, that is a good thesis statement because it tells us, we can tell the strategy, number one, it's obvious. The strategy is classification and division because we're taking a large category and we're breaking it down. We also know probably how the paragraphs will be structured because thesis statements are about structure. The best thesis statements relate in some way to the structure of your essay. So using subpoints to structure your essay from the thesis statement is a good way to do it. Presumably, that essay about bears would have one body paragraph about brown bears, one body paragraph about black bears, and one body paragraph about polar bears. Polar bears. And that's the magic number, right? 5 paragraphs, magic number. 5 paragraphs, 1,000 words, right? So that would take care of it. The other thing that I want to hit home about the thesis statement is I always say this is from an old nursery rhyme that no one today recognizes. And so every time I write this, I feel like a relic. I always say the cheese stands alone. And what I mean by this, it's from a nursery rhyme. No one remembers the nursery rhyme. Maybe you do. Hopefully you do. It's called The Farmer in the Dell. And at the end of the song, if the cheese stands alone, the cheese doesn't have any friends. So what does that mean? It means that your thesis statement by itself should function as a microcosm of the entire paper. It should be able to stand by itself. If I go in and gut your thesis statement, which I will sometimes do, especially if we do a roast workshop, that thesis statement needs to contain completely everything that you're going to write about in that paper. So the thesis statement that we talked about previously about the bears, that fit all of these criteria, right? Because it told us, we know, all right, this person is writing a classification division essay. It's about bears of different types, and he's going to have one body paragraph for each of these different types of bears. We know all of that from looking at a single sentence. So that meets the criteria of the cheese standing alone, right? It's just one of those things. I like to use things that help with memory, right? But this really doesn't work because no one knows that nursery rhyme, but it's all good. So does everyone get that about the thesis statement? You also need to make sure that the thesis statement conforms to the strategy, okay? And what that means is, like I said, for the first essay, you're going to be picking between 5 of the 9. I'm just going to abbreviate. You're going to be picking between 5 of the 9 strategies. So the thesis statement that you write needs to conform to the strategy or to display the strategy in and of itself, right? So if you're doing a process essay, there are 3 steps to preparing a peanut butter sandwich. The preparation step, the assembly step, and the plating step, okay, or the presentation. That contains a process in and of itself, right? You see, so the thesis conforms to the strategy. The strategy is evident. When we do the roast workshops and I remove the thesis statements, the first thing I'm going to ask, what strategy is it? And if we can't tell because it's not structured properly, that is a problem. If I had to say which was the most important part of the essay, I would say without question, it is the thesis statement, right? Because the thesis statement makes up the entirety. It's like this. It's like the spinal cord in the human body, right? It holds up everything. So that's the way you should look at it. Single sentence, subpoints are a good strategy. The cheese stands alone. Conform to the strategy. Also, try to stay fairly concise. Sometimes the thesis statements can get a little long, a little bit wordy. Keep it simple. Say more with less. As the semester progresses, I will talk about wordiness, right? Using too many words to communicate an idea. It's easy to do, right? And it doesn't really help because even though you put a bunch of words on the page, if you don't really say anything with the words that you put forth, it's not really effective, right? So that's an important thing too. Think about wordiness. Try to be concise yet specific, right? Concise yet specific. I want to show you one other thing really quick. This is an exercise called the ladder of specificity. Because I'm going to keep saying this all semester. Be specific, right? And so I want to talk about what it means to be specific. So here's my ladder, okay? Everyone see the ladder? I'm drawing it right now. All right, we got rungs on the ladder, okay. So down here at the bottom of the ladder, these things are not very specific, right? Up here at the top of the ladder, these things are highly specific. So what I want to do is put a term here, and then we will move one rung up the ladder each time that we come up with a new term, okay? And this will make sense once I start. So the term we're going to start with is animal, okay? Gosh, All right, you guys see that. Animals. What is one step up from animals? One step in specificity, because animals is huge, right? Talk about animals. I mean, that's like, you know, anything from the flea to the great blue whale, right? They're all animals. So how do we get a little more specific? Okay, insect. Good. Insect. That is still animal, but it is more specific. Still a massive category. I think they might be, if memory serves, they might be the biggest kingdom there is, right? More insects than anything else. So how do we get one step up from insect? A spider is an arachnid. So a spider is an arthropod, but it is not an insect. What is a good an insect? What do you guys remember we're my biology people. What are the classifications for an insect?
And I got like 6 legs.
6 legs and
Something else.
3 segments in the body. They have a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. Whereas the spider just has, generally speaking, the 2, the head and the abdomen, right? And ants. So we got ants, we got praying mantis. I'm partial to the praying mantis, okay? Praying mantises are cool. If you've never seen a orchid mantis, you should Google one after class. They're really, really cool. Okay, praying mantis. All right, good. So one step up from praying mantis. Okay, I just said it. Orchid mantis, right? Which is a beautiful insect, by the way. I know that to some of you that may seem a contradiction, but I believe if you look it up, you'll see. So orchid mantis, okay? And then even one further step up from orchid mantis, we could say pink orchid mantis, because they're different colors, right? So we moved up the ladder of specificity. You want to try to stay near the top of the ladder, near the highest rung. When you're being descriptive, oh gosh, can everybody hear me? It looks like I'm
Yeah, I guess
fading
I'm
out.
ready.
Okay, yeah, you want to be as descriptive as possible, okay, and you want to try to be as specific as possible using this ladder as a way to think about it, right? So maybe you sit at home with your notes and you draw the ladder, and then you move up the ladder if you think you might be broad. Because I found that students tend to be very general with their writing, right? There are many ways that you can make a jack-o'-lantern. Okay, many ways, right? There are many ways you can do anything. Many ways doesn't really tell us much. It's an extremely broad thing. We want to try to be very specific when we speak. Okay, I'm going to try to show you one more thing, but my computer right now is completely frozen. So give me just 1 second. I do want to show you the essay prompt, but we may be out of it because it looks like I am frozen up. You can still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, okay. Can you see me though, or is it frozen?
No, it's working fine too.
Wow, okay. Maybe it's just me. Well, are there any questions for me currently while we're waiting on the computer to stop misbehaving?
Mm-mm.
You guys feeling good about this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
I hear somebody put something in the
They
chat.
asked, are you selling any chickens?
Am I selling it? I might. I mean, you know, the season to breed them is rapidly approaching. But I think the problem with that is that people don't really realize that when you breed chickens, you get 50% hens and roosters. So you may end up with more noise than you want. So I'm probably going to breed a few this go around, and if you're really interested, I don't know that I'd sell them, but I might send a few your way. Yeah, okay, I'm completely frozen up, you guys. I don't know what the deal is. So if this doesn't stop in a minute, I'll just guess I'll turn you guys loose. Give it another minute though. Looks like it might be doing something. It's fun to play mad scientist with the chicken genes, you know, try to get different things to happen. Well, I guess I can just tell you about it. We'll look at the prompts next time because my computer is blocked out. The first essay, you have a choice from 5 rhetorical strategies: process, classification and division, narration, cause and effect, and the other one, Brian, narration, cause and effect. Oh, and process. Okay. So those are the 5 that you have to choose from. The topic can be anything that you want within reason. Okay, so if you want to do like a classification and division essay on different types of video games or whatever, that's fine. Just try not to do something crazy with the topic, or don't try to be provocative or weird or like that. I mean, I shouldn't have to say that, but every once in a while you get students that like to push boundaries. So just, think about what you might want to do. We're going to be practicing these strategies in class, um, in future classes, so you will know how to implement the strategy by the time that we write the essay. The next time that we come in, we're going to take a look at MLA format. We're also going to take a look at, oops, there we go, it looks like I'm back. We're going to take a look at MLA format, and we're also going to look at topic sentences. I can read the screen now, Sasha, sorry. And so we'll do that next time. We'll also talk, MLA format is a drag, folks. I'm just going to let you know. It's very tedious, and I recommend that you do it yourself instead of using like a citation machine, because they almost always make mistakes. And I'm going to try to share. Here's the prompt for those of you that want to see it. One second. There we go. Everybody see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Oops, I'm drawing on it. There we go. Yeah, so you pick a strategy, right? And then you pick a topic. It says the topics will be provided by your instructor. Your instructor is providing you with freedom, okay? The freedom to choose your own topic. Whatever you're interested in, whatever you find particularly resonant. I want you to enjoy writing the essay, and I feel like giving you the freedom to choose your topic might help with that process, because maybe you'll have the opportunity to talk about something you're really into, right? Maybe it's a hobby or something that you like. And that's basically it. I mean, it's 1,000 words MLA. You need a hook. We'll talk what a hook is. A hook is like an attention getter. You need body paragraphs with topic sentences, 5 paragraphs, 1 intro, 3 body, 1 conclusion. If you use secondary sources, then they should be cited. I am not requiring that, and I recommend that you don't, but some people like to. The reason I recommend that you don't use sources for this one is because I haven't gone over what a credible source is and isn't. So people tend to use sources like, imright.com or something like that to fortify what they're saying, and it may not be credible. So consider that, and that should be everything. I can show you the, no, I'll wait for next time to talk about the response paper. Are there any questions? I'll let you go about 5 minutes early.
No, sir.
All right, well, we will keep meeting until February, folks. Thank you for
I have a question.
joining me. Sure, yeah.
I'm sorry. If you pick one of the topics, is it okay if like your essay has, let's say if it had narration and something else in it too, would that be okay?
Yeah. I prefer that you stick to one strategy. I mean, it really depends. If you're going to narrate a story about how you assemble the jigsaw puzzle or something, and like you're kind of crossing the boundary between narration and process, that it depends. It's a situational thing. Did you have something in particular in mind?
No, I don't. I was just saying
Okay.
just in case I ran across it.
I would prefer just for the first essay that you don't mince strategy. You just pick.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Sure, Christopher. What you got? We will be getting our desired topics to you. Sometimes I take time out of class to ask you. I used to do I'm definitely going to approve the second topic. Okay, like when we do the argumentative essay, there is a topic approval phase. There isn't really a topic approval phase for the first essay. If you are worried that I might not like it or something, or that it may not be what I'm looking for, just seek me out either through email or before or after class and say, hey, I'm thinking of writing about this thing, and then I can give you feedback that way. Okay. Yes, until the semester. That is taking a little bit of time, by the way. He asked about the YouTube lectures being posted to, I'm sorry, the class lectures being posted to YouTube. They are, and the previous one was posted to YouTube. It does take me a while. My internet at home, I live out in the middle of the woods, and my internet is really bad. So it takes like an hour to upload each video, and I have 4 classes that are online right now. So if it's not an instant gratification thing, like the video's on there the next day, it'll be the next day or two when I get the chance to upload it. But yes, they will all go to YouTube. That is the only way that I can mandate these collaborate sessions, if I also provide them on YouTube, because if somebody has situations at home with internet or whatever, they can do it on their own time. Any other questions before I turn you guys in? Okay, good deal, Christopher. Thank you. If that's all we got, can I repeat the 5 strategies? Yes. Narration, process, cause and effect or cause and effect. Cause, effect, or cause and effect. Sorry. Compare and contrast and classification and division. So one more time, that is narration, process, cause and effect, compare and contrast, or classification and division. And this, I will make this prompt available to you in the writing assignments folder in Blackboard. The deadline to turn in the first essay. I think it is, let me get it to you, because it's different for a few of my classes. So I got to make sure I don't tell you the wrong thing. For future reference, the syllabus has the course schedule, and it details everything that we're doing. So if you're ever not sure, just if you go to the syllabus tab on Blackboard, it says Murphy syllabus there, and you can check that. It says Essay 1 is due the 14th of February, which is that Valentine's Day? We may have to change that.
That is on, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So maybe it'll be due that Monday. I will look into that this weekend. Okay. I don't want to ruin anybody's Valentine. So yeah, if that's it. Okay. I'll hang around another minute if you have a question you want to ask me. If not, you're free to go. Thank you very much. I feel like we had a productive discussion today, and we will continue. Not next Monday, but next Wednesday. Monday is a holiday, right? That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Can you
All right.
repeat
All
again
right.
when it's due?
Can I repeat what?
Again, when the first essay is due?
Well, right now it's due on the 14th of February, but I'll probably change it to the 15th.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, y'all have a good one. See you next Wednesday. Take care.